Hi, welcome to this week's episode of Regen Strategics, The Pulse. I'm flying solo today, Pat Gardner, your host, but fortunately I'm joined by Paul Hadfield-Jia and Dr. Jemma Dalrymple. Paul is a board member with Rainbow Families Australia and Dr. Jemma? Gemma's fine. Jemma is here from Sexual Health Quarters, talking predominantly, or to start with, about the ARTS Bill, so the Assisted Reproductive Technology and Surrogacy Bill 2025, which is currently before the Western Australian Parliament. But to bring you into this and talk to your personal story, Paul, tell me about your parenting journey.
Okay, it's been a long journey. It started around 2018. Initially, because there wasn't a lot of information about surrogacy in Australia, I would connect with other people that had been through a similar pathway. And also, it's really important to note as well that the reason that I was looking at that was because currently in Western Australia, there isn't a pathway for men or gay men to have children through surrogacy. So through my connections and through different networks, I was introduced to a clinic in the US, and then through there, the story started. And so it was quite a long process. First of all, being introduced to an egg donor, and then eventually a surrogate. That was all the way back in 2018 and then 19. We created embryos at the end of 2019, and then started the process of trying to get pregnant. We had 3 different tries, and then eventually we were successful in October of 2020, in the middle of COVID. And so my daughter was actually born right in the middle of COVID, in 2021. Yeah.
Particularly lonely nights then.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, it was a really tough time because of what was going on in the world. But I've got to tell you, like the experience that me and my husband had, and the support that we had from those people was just incredible. You know, I always tell people I think I had the best experience and the best journey. And those people are still, they're part of my extended family. So we still talk now. We still share photos. My kids know who they are and what they've done to bring them into this world. And we're just very proud.
Yeah. No, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's very heartwarming. What will this bill change that's before the WA Parliament?
Look, this bill is a very complex bill, so there's lots of different angles to this. What it will mean for Western Australians is that it will give easier access to surrogacy and ART in Western Australia. There are not just gay people, there are many heterosexual couples that struggle to have children due to medical complications, and because they don't have any other option, they're forced to go overseas. Now, that means that you face not just an expensive process to go through, not just a lengthy process, but it's also quite risky for everybody involved, whether it's the surrogate or the intended parents. And so this bill will actually introduce an easier process for people to access surrogacy. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is it will remove the current discrimination that we have towards the LGBTQIA plus community, which is really important. The Equality Bill was brought in so long ago, and the government has promised to fix this for such a long time, so it's so important that this goes through. And then the third thing, and this is particularly important to myself and so many other people that have had to go through international surrogacy options, is that both my children currently don't have both their parents legally recognised. Yeah. So with this new bill that's going to be introduced, it will mean that we'll be able to apply for parentage rights. And so both of our children will be legally our children. I know that sounds a little bit ridiculous, because we're looking after, we're with them day in, day out. But a few years ago, I had a cancer scare, and I just suddenly had the realization that if anything happened to me at that time, before my second child was born, my son, my daughter could end up going into care, and that was really quite frightening.
Yeah. Jemma, the bill addresses surrogacy provisions, but it also looks to reform assisted fertility as well. What are the changes that you're anticipating and I guess preparing yourself for within practice at the moment?
Yeah, look, there are actually really significant changes to the way that assisted fertility is going to be regulated in Western Australia. And it's going to streamline processes in a lot of different situations, not just in surrogacy, but also in situations where, for example, couples might want to test for genetic disorders with IVF. That's going to get easier. It's going to make rules around storage of embryos and of eggs and of sperm a little less rigid and a little easier to regulate. Obviously, the surrogacy provisions are incredibly exciting, I think, for everybody working in the fertility space, but also everybody working in the LGBTIQA plus health space. And in addition to allowing surrogacy for gay couples, it's important to note that this bill, as it currently stands, is going to allow something called reciprocal IVF, which is where you have a situation where you've got two partners, so a couple, and they are both people with uteruses and ovaries, and those two people, whether they're female or male, those two people might want to choose to have children in such a way that one partner will provide the eggs and they'll be fertilised with donor sperm through IVF, and then those embryos will be put into the other partner. And that's something that's been done across Australia for quite a while now, and in Western Australia until very recently, where we've had couples come and talk to us requesting this kind of treatment, we've had to say, really sorry, it's illegal. So that's incredibly exciting that will be allowed as well. There's also going to be better regulations around children who are conceived by assisted reproduction, particularly through donor sperm, donor egg surrogacy arrangements, being able to access information about their conception and their genetic heritage. So it's a very big and, as Paul said, a complicated piece of legislation, but really exciting and in a lot of ways just bringing WA kind of up to speed with things that have been done other places in Australia for a little while now.
Yeah. And exactly. So this is bringing us up to speed with what other jurisdictions around Australia already have in place within their health systems, within their parliament.
Yeah, to an extent, and it's tricky because fertility law is very much state-based in Australia, and so it's different when you go to different places, which gets very complicated. But no, it's a really positive thing, I think, for Western Australia, this legislation.
Yeah. And Paul, I can tell by the way you rattled off a few of those provisions. They're close to home in more ways than one, but you've been undertaking a longer term campaign to build visibility and awareness of these reforms. Take us through how that originated and where that's led you to.
It's quite a journey. And
sure is.
Look, this all started off with me just being a proud dad.
Yeah.
It was simple as that. I was just a proud dad, and I'm part of a community on Facebook called Gay Dads WA.
Yep.
And so this is a Facebook group where there are gay men that have got children or want to have children, and it's just a support network. Because currently, within WA, there isn't the support network for that particular group, or for many groups actually within the queer community, and so it's a support network, and so I asked the group and said, "Hey, look, I'm so proud of Samantha. Why don't we march in the Perth parade during Pride Fest?" And so people are like, "Yeah, let's do this." And so we. I organised the event, got T-shirts, we did a logo, all of that kind of thing, and we took the kids just marching through the street, just with their T-shirts on during the parade. It was really interesting because when we started, the kids were like, "Oh no, what are the parents making us do?" It's like, we want to go home, And then by the
Take us to a meeting.
Yeah. And then by the end of it, they're like, "Can we go again?"
It's do another lap.
Let's do another lap. Yeah, absolutely. And so it was just really powerful, and that's really where it started. And then for me, it was around raising awareness and visibility. There is a lot of stereotypes that are used, particularly for gay men that have got children, and that still stand today. And so really, it was around saying there are a lot of queer people in the community, including women, that and trans people, and all of the LGBTQIA plus community that have developed their families through different routes. And so it was basically saying, let's raise awareness so that, to make this acceptable and so it doesn't become an issue. And so really that's where it began. And so from there, then I started getting involved in speaking about being a gay dad and being proud of that. And it's just continued from there. It's been an interesting journey.
Yeah, I bet it has. And not over yet. Obviously, it's still before Parliament, and there'll be probably some unseemly aspects to that debate, which is unfortunately par for the course with the way our bills are made into laws, or eventually into laws. How do you go about navigating that period of time where, there probably is some stigma that's being raised and it would be perceived as being thrown your way?
Look, I think it's any conversation that you have when you're trying to create change. It's about just being honest and open, and I think it's about being respectful. So, sometimes I've faced opposition or people not quite understanding what this means, and so what I do is I just tell my story. Telling stories is just so powerful, and so first of all, understanding that someone might not have lived experience of someone who was a queer parent or someone that's gone through surrogacy, and just by sitting down and sharing my story, and it being heartfelt and true, there's a good chance you might change their mind or start them bringing them on that journey. And so I think it's just about understanding that it's about sharing stories, educating, informing people, and that's really where this all started. And I had an opportunity about 2 years ago to meet the Premier. So the Premier invited me and some of my community group to come and talk to him. And so we sat down and we just shared our stories. We didn't go in there to talk about the bill or the legislation. It was just, we're parents and these are the journeys that we've gone through and this is what it means to us. And we had a straight couple there that talked about their journey of creating their own children. There was a surrogate in WA that created a beautiful child for a gay couple that had to move state to have their child here in WA. And so it was really so powerful, and it's just continued from there. Yeah.
Oh, well done. That's power of storytelling and personalising it from the outset. MPs would recognise that. There's probably some stigmas and perceptions of MPs as a general group of people within society, but then those prejudices, those stereotypes drop away when you know an MP or you know the local MP around the corner. And I imagine it's the same for someone that maybe hasn't had that experience in their life or their worldview that has encountered a gay dad or some of the LGBTIQA plus community as a parent.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, we're running a campaign at the moment. We've been running it for 2 weeks. And this campaign is about connecting people with lived experience to connect with their local MP in their constituency and just to share their story. Because there are so many people out there. I don't think that people realize there are so many people that have gone through surrogacy that are out there, and just to talk to the local MPs. And what's been great is that we've had a really good response. So there's been 200 emails that have gone out to MPs, and there's been quite a few MPs that have been reacting to that. Like they want to speak to those people and find out more details, and that's tremendous. That's really powerful.
Well, it's that mosaic of the community they represent, and no different to a school community or your social circles. It's not going to be the same. Every relationship, every environment you encounter is going to be different. Jemma, take our listeners through the work that Sexual Health Quarters undertakes. We were talking before about its probably better known previous identity for a lot of people, my generation, as Family Planning WA.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people are aware of our clinic on the corner of Rose Street and Lake Street, which was Family Planning WA for a lot of years. But we have rebranded and broadened our remit a lot. So as part of our work, we are still providing contraception services and care for people with unplanned pregnancies, but we're doing a lot more sexual health and a lot more relationship relationship health, and one of our target groups, we obviously target or try to target underserviced groups in the community, and one of our target groups is LGBTIQA plus people. And so as part of that, we're aiming to provide sexual health services to that part of the community, but also we now provide some gender affirming care. So we've had a gender affirming clinic running for the past 18 months or so now at SHQ, and increasingly sort of moving into education. So our education team runs education programs for the wider community, but also for health professionals in that space as well. So yeah, we've changed a lot, I think, from that clinic that everyone remembers, even though we're in the same spot.
Yeah. No, it was on the train line on the way to uni, so it was
absolutely.
Every day, a couple of times.
Absolutely.
You'd sort of stare out when you didn't have your phone.
What are they doing
pre-smartphone,
there?
so, that's great. So, Paul, have there been some unlikely allies or things that you haven't been expecting that have arisen during the campaign or that longer process to raise the need for these reforms?
So I think that when I first started off on this, I was looking at it from a gay dad perspective, and the fact that I didn't have the parentage rights for our children. But it's a journey. It's been an absolute journey, as I continue to say. And so I've met other people that have shared their story and then explained what the legislation means to them. So as you were saying before, around reciprocal IVF, and what this means to gay women, to lesbians, and that want to have children, or even the legislation is going to open up to the trans community and so much more. People of diverse gender, and so it's been a community effort to try and get to where we are. So. What was great, what was amazing was when we were in Parliament, when it was read into Parliament a couple of weeks ago, I put an invite out for people to attend. And so we had such a diverse range of people in there. We were sat up in the pews at the top watching the legislation being read out. There was a lot of tears up there as we sat there listening to it. But there was mothers in there that had their children. That had their children through surrogacy. It was such a proud moment. There were gay dads in there. There was all sorts of people. It was great. So, it's going to make such a big difference for all Western Australians. And it's been fantastic.
Well, that public gallery is there to be used, so I'm glad it was sufficiently filled, at least for that moment of Parliament.
Oh, it was. And can I just say, so when we were taking in, you've got to be very quiet and very serious, yes?
Of course.
So
parliamentary.
No phones and no photography, and and don't make any noise, and don't clap or anything. And so Minister Hamat finished the speech, the reading, and it's quite a long reading. Obviously, it's a complicated bill. Yeah. And people in the House, in Parliament, then gave a round of applause. And so all of us that were sat upstairs all started to clap as well. And it was like thunder in there. And so all the MPs were suddenly looking up at us like, what's going on here? And it was a tremendous moment. Yeah.
Well, great. I hope there's a few more of those as it passes through both houses, both chambers. Some of the stigma and the misconception, I mean, it arises from ignorance, but you go to the root cause of that, and often it's due to a lack of familiarity and probably a lack of education. Where can changes be made to our curriculum and the way in which we're raising children in our society to, I guess, be more inclusive and recognise that these reforms need to continue to progress as society changes?
I think from a healthcare perspective, there are a lot of ways that changes can be made. And I mean, you spoke of education and of communicating with children, and that's obviously so important that we're normalising different families and the fact that everyone's family looks different. But I think that in healthcare, and it is increasingly happening, but we need better teaching of doctors and nurses. Even for myself, working in sexual health, my training was very much along a heteronormative kind of path, and that was how you were taught to take a sexual history. I've worked as a general practitioner for 12 years or so now, and until about 5 years ago, when patients came into my practice and their details were entered into the practice software, the software didn't have a place to enter gender assigned at birth, sex assigned at birth, as opposed to gender identity, and didn't have a place to enter someone's pronouns if they weren't, the typical cisgendered pronouns. So even system changes like that are so important, where we're looking at people who are sexuality and gender diverse and wanting them to come in and feel comfortable in healthcare settings. We need to go right to the root of those systems things to make them feel comfortable and make them feel at home, so that they're not put off accessing healthcare, so that they're not avoiding healthcare. And I suppose, if I can run on a little bit, but when we're talking about this bill, obviously the main importance of this bill is as Paul's told us, to open up surrogacy and to make stories like his just a little bit easier. But to me as well, I also see it as so important as removing one bit more discrimination, as making sexuality and gender diverse people feeling just that little bit less discriminated against, that little bit more comfortable. Yes, you belong in our society. We're not going to tell you that it's, illegal for you to use surrogacy to reproduce because you don't meet that heteronormative cisgender kind of couple that a lot of people grew up with.
Yeah.
So I think that there's progress being made, and it's so wonderful to see, but there's a way to go.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Could I add to that?
Yes, please.
So I think it's a really good point that you raise. And I can give you some really good examples just recently. So my daughter's just about to go into from daycare. She's 4. She's a little redhead, and she's just my everything. She's one half of my heart, and my son's the other half of my heart. And so she's about to go into primary school.
Yeah.
And so, as you know, as a parent, you're both parents, so you know this. You get a million forms to fill out. And so it was interesting. On some of the forms, it would say parent 1, carer 1, parent 2, carer 2. And then some forms, it would say mother and father. All right. And, and for a lot of people, that can be quite challenging to navigate, because then it's about trying to change people's mindsets around, we need to be a bit more understanding of the wider community, so it's more inclusive. Yeah. I can give you another example. Both my children were born in the States, as I said earlier. When we came back into Australia, trying to get our children into the system, into Medicare and Centrelink. So it was only a few months ago, my husband and I, with our son, stood at the front counter of Medicare Centrelink saying, hey, we want to register our son into the system, and the lady looked at us and said, I'm sorry, but I don't know how to do that. You're just going to have to come back another day. I can't deal with this. And so we did. We left, and then we came back on another day. But it's those kind of barriers, those little simple things, which can make it really challenging. Yeah. Now, as part of my role within Rainbow Families, we ran a survey as part of the government's inclusion strategy for the LGBTQIA community. So there's a strategy that's being worked on currently, and so I worked on a survey with the Department of Communities and sent that out to the community. And we had some really good responses, and a lot of the things that Jemma mentioned and that are issues were raised on there. And so we've had a really good response from the Department of Communities, and we're hoping that some of that information is going to go into creating a strategy that will change and educate and inform people, within the government sector, within health services, to try and make it more inclusive for everybody.
Yeah. And assuming the legislation progresses and passes and is enacted, those systems will need wholesale change, won't they? So
absolutely, there's going to be more rainbow families, so you're going to need to have more services to support that.
Yeah, and it becomes embedded within core processes, so that you're not waiting for the one officer at
that knows how to
at the Medicare office. That's right. Yeah. Turning away people from those types of services is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Jemma, you touched on some of the work that you do, I guess, as outreach to doctors and the health system around considerations they need to be making to better service the LGBTIQA+ community. Without betraying confidences, if you can sort of generalise, are there some themes and issues that are top of mind that you see needing to be addressed more immediately?
I think really to emphasise what I've already mentioned, Pat, that putting systems in place and educating teams in medical practices, in hospitals, and all across the health system. And it's really important to remember as well that we talk about the health system as if it was one beast, but it's not. It's many, and large parts of it are small businesses. But I think that education is key, and not just for doctors and nurses, but also for receptionists and clerks, and, as Paul has said, putting the systems into place so that it's not something that someone's got to figure out how to enter in. It's not an exception. These are just the questions that we ask everybody, and we don't assume anything of anybody. So that people coming into the system who perhaps don't fit an expected norm feel welcome and feel comfortable, and don't feel as if they're having to kind of jump up and down and say, hang on a minute, my family doesn't work like that, or hang on a minute, my anatomy is not what you assume by the fact that I identify as female. I think we need to embed those systems in.
Yeah. And I mean, you could take that as a need to embed society-wide, but for you use the term heteronormative for a sort of characterisation of your study and training initially as a doctor. Is that changing?
It is absolutely changing,
great.
Yes. And we're definitely getting more education in, again, talking from a sexual health perspective, but also I think there's more awareness of the LGBTIQA plus community as a priority group in its own right, needing priority healthcare, and increasing awareness that this group does in fact have worse health outcomes, partly in mental health and in sexually transmitted infections, but also people are less likely to show up for things like their cervical screening. So lesbian women might not know that they need it, or just might not feel comfortable coming into the doctor because they've had a bad experience in the past. I was about to say,
so that is a driving factor.
Exactly, very much so. So we actually have the federal government released a report, released a strategy or an action plan for the health and wellbeing of LGBTIQA plus people late last year, which is really exciting to see that this is actually being recognised and addressed as a group that we need to prioritise and to focus on in health. And yes, in medical education it is improving, in doctor training it's improving, in services it's improving as well.
Paul, with the vote and debate before the WA Parliament, what would you say to someone who hadn't made up their mind that's a legislator presently?
Okay, well, I think the first thing that I would say is please reach out to people with lived experience. The only way that you're going to understand this legislation is actually by understanding how it's going to impact Western Australians. And so, speak to people. If you're an MP and you want to reach out to me, I'd be happy to connect you with people in the community that have gone through surrogacy or struggled with having children in Western Australia, or want to have children and can't under the current legislation.
And not just in generalities, like it'd be in their electorate, in their neighbourhood, in their suburb.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are so many people out there, and everybody's got a story, and it's complex. So there are so many different types of stories. So yeah, please connect with me. The other thing I'd kind of say as well is that I do want to say is, I'm hoping that our politicians are going to be respectful, and that we're not going to make this political, and that we are going to put the lives and the hopes and dreams of Western Australians first. I don't think anyone would want to vote against a bill that's going to create, children and happy families, loving families in Western Australia. That's my hope.
And I think I know the answer, but I imagine there's a sufficiently robust support network for those that do experience trauma through this potential debate that Parliament's going to have?
It's interesting. I think that, I was actually thinking about it just yesterday.
Yeah.
There's, a lot of people that have had their children through international surrogacy, or even just locally within WA, because it's so difficult. A lot of these parents or intended parents do actually go through a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
Are there support systems? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You might have an opinion.
I'm aware of some general ones, but none specifically geared to the surrogate situation, because you're right, people within Western Australia and people who've come through the fertility clinics to access surrogacy are really quite rare. I think that if I was seeing people, I'd be referring them to your Facebook group. Get in touch with this lovely group and get to know
Which would be more than welcome,
people.
actually.
Absolutely, for sure, absolutely.
But I can't agree with you more about the value of that lived experience voice that's taught me so much, as a healthcare practitioner, and that I think that if people are making decisions around this bill, please listen to that voice.
Yeah, great. Well, I mean, similar to most social change, most reform, most legislation, personalising a story is often the most powerful way to make an impact and to make your view heard. All the best over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you both for joining us today. So we'll follow that debate and stay connected. Once again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.